All right. Hey, everybody. Sorry for the delay. I tell you, I use Restream and they changed their entire system and I'm confused. So I'll get it right one day. But I want everyone to welcome my good friend David Root back to the show. And good to see you, David.
It's good to see you, Tim. It's been what, at least 3 or 4 months now.
Yes, it has.
Yes.
You've
Oh,
been traveling all over the place too, I
oh, I
noticed.
do. I love traveling. I love
Oh,
traveling
yeah.
down to Columbus and back a couple times a month. Here, there, and everywhere.
There you go. But just to let everybody know, since David is on the show, you're right. We're going to talk legislation pending in the state of Ohio. and David is definitely the I would say the expert on legislation pending veterans for the state of Ohio. And that is one of the reasons why David's on here as often as I can get him. Because hey, everybody in Ohio needs to know what's going on with their veterans, especially down there in Columbus.
Yeah,
And I understand that there are three bills you definitely want to cover today.
there are three. Keeping in mind why I say there's only three. Uh, the middle of November will be the end of the summer break, and
Yes.
they'll come back to actually start doing some work again, as far as hearings, committee hearings, and sessions, and so forth. That'll only give them a month before they break for Christmas, and then that's the end of the General Assembly, and everything that's in there now, if it doesn't pass before then, will become null and void, and they start all over.
All over again.
So it's important. I think there's at least three of them. One I'm concerned, very concerned with. There's one that should not have any problem. It's almost there as it is, and another one sort of in the middle needs quite a bit of work, but is still possible to get it passed. But
Well, let me bring up this slide on the first one we're going to discuss. All right. HB 231, establishing a 988 suicide prevention mental health telephone line. It is
yes,
sponsored by Gail. How do you pronounce her last name? I always mess it up. It's
I I, I usually do
Pavliga.
too. Pavlika, I believe, something along that lines.
All right.
Pavlika, it's close.
And Adam Miller. And I met Adam
Yep,
several times.
Adam's a good man.
Yes.
Unfortunately, we're losing Adam.
Yes.
He's going to be running. Well, he is running for Congress, and he's hoping to be sent to Washington D.C. by his voters and help us there. So hopefully
Yes.
we won't lose him, but we're losing him in the state house. Big advocate
Yes.
for veterans.
Yes, he is. And he's a veteran himself, correct?
Yes he is.
Yes.
He's a JAG officer in the National Guard. So,
Yes. All right. Now, why does Ohio have to pass a law establishing 988 as the mental health telephone line?
well, actually, that's sort of right, but not quite. We already have it, and it's in effect. We don't. This bill does not pass accepting it or putting it online. It's already there, and it's expanding. It's been there for 2 years now, and constantly expanding, getting more and more calls, and doing more and more work for our veterans
Okay.
that are calling. It is a originally, as everybody I'm sure is aware, was a national. It still is a national hotline, and it was the regular 7 digits, and then they changed it to the 3 digits so people could remember it
Mm-hmm.
a lot easier, which was a good thing. But
Yes.
they're only funding it for so long. Pretty soon that national line will go away, and pretty soon the funding they are giving Ohio and other states right now to do their own will go away also. So this bill will create a fund to pay the bills for
Ah,
our own
okay.
988 system. And it's important that we do have one and we
Yes.
don't use the national, even if there is one, because if you call and it goes to national, you have no clue who you're getting, and they have no clue who they're talking to. If you call in Ohio and you, based on your your phone that you're calling on, it will link you to the closest calling station in the state of Ohio, and you will be
Mm.
talking to people from Ohio. And when you say you're from whatever city, they'll know where you're at, what you're talking about. And if you talk about an event that just happened, they'll understand what happened, what's going on. So it's important that we have our own, and we do find the funding for it. And this will create a line item in the budget so that we don't have to keep going back year after year and saying we need to fund this. We may have to adjust the amount each year,
Mhm.
but we
Yeah.
don't have to create a fund each year. This will create a permanent fund to support the call centers.
That's good. I'm going to have to uh, make up some flyers about that for when I go to my resource fairs and everything, since I got a whole section of pamphlets and everything for
Right.
September 22nd already made up. I should slide that into it as well.
Yeah.
Oh,
And it's been out there for a while. The bill was introduced in 23, I believe,
mhm.
early spring, somewhere right in that time frame. And it's had a couple of hearings, and that's it. It may be only one hearing. So it's still got the whole distance to
It's to
go
go.
and
Yeah.
only a month to do it in. I did talk to Representative Bernard Willis,
Mhm.
who is in charge of the Veterans Caucus, and he assures me that that's a top item on their list for the lame duck session. We have a caucus coming up in a few weeks, and that will be one of the things we'll talk about and get all the veteran service organizations on board with it,
Mhm.
and doing what we can to get it passed. But he assures me that we're going to push on it.
Good. Now, just so our viewers know, this bill's still in the House of Representatives and has not reached the Senate yet,
Right.
correct?
It hasn't
Okay.
even reached the Senate or the House floor. It's still in the committee, and it has to pass out of committee, then get passed on the House floor, and then go through the same process in the Senate. And if they make any changes, then it's got to go back to the House for their
House again. Yeah.
consent and so forth. But it has basically a month to do all that, and that's kind of scary. So,
Mhm. Yes. It can be done though. You and I proved it.
oh
It
yeah,
can
it
be
can be done.
done.
Yeah, it can.
Matter of fact, not to change the subject here, but as far as my bill goes,
Uh-huh.
and we already know it's been signed and everything. It went into effect October 1st.
Right.
Um, I got an email from Christina Rogner's staff.
Uh-huh.
Governor DeWine heard about my rallies, rallies against suicide.
Uh-huh.
He wants one down at the State House next year.
Oh wow! Well,
Yes.
you keep me posted. I'll be there for you. You
Oh
know
yeah.
that.
Well, what we're planning on doing is we're still going to do the one in Cleveland.
Okay.
Hopefully, we can coordinate with Columbus and have it run the exact same time as the one up in Cleveland.
Oh, okay.
And then there's a few people around the state that want to hold one as well in their city at
Okay.
the same time we do ours in Cleveland.
Right.
So
Okay.
I
Okay.
think it might work.
Do your listeners know what bill you're talking about?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Oh,
I've
okay.
talked about
All
it
right.
a lot. Yes.
Okay. All right. Yeah.
And in case you are new, my bill was SB 225. And it designates September 22nd as Veteran Suicide Awareness and Prevention Day in the state of Ohio.
Yeah.
I'm working with a few congressmen from Ohio, a few senators. We're going to try to make it a national day as soon as the election's over with.
Right. Yeah.
Because everybody that's helping me on this is up for re-election.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Get that behind you, then you can start working again.
Yes. Now back to the telephone line. I wish they actually had this line decades ago.
Oh yeah.
Not just the 988, but the hotline altogether.
Right.
I think it could have saved my brother's life, to be honest with you.
It would have saved a lot of people's lives. And I think everybody, probably every listener you have right now, has somebody somewhere that they're aware of that this is affected. And suicide is, as we know. I mean, we don't even need to talk about that. We already know where we stand on that. But
Yes.
it's something that we definitely need to make the public aware of and
Hmm.
find ways to prevent it and slow it down.
Yes.
And this 988 is a big boost
Big.
to do that.
Oh, yes, it will. It definitely will be. Now, the next bill, let me scroll here. Now, why do I only have, okay. I'm sure we'll find the other one here, but SB 231 includes Space Force and Armed Forces Armed and Uniformed Service, sponsored by my state senator, Christina Rogner.
Yep. Again,
And
that's your gal. She is not a veteran, but she is definitely an advocate. And if you bring the right cause to her, she will fight it tooth and nail, as you know. She's a good gal to have in our Senate. This bill is the one that I'm not really too terribly worried about. It's already gone through the Senate, went through the hearings there in the Senate, went passed on the Senate floor, went over to the House, has gone through the committee there, and is back out or will be introduced back onto the House floor as soon as we reconvene after the break. And all it needs to do is one meeting of the Senate or of the House, and it should pass. Of all the votes that have come through in all the different committees and so forth, there's not been one single one against it. So I don't see any problem with it as long as we make sure we get it on the agenda to have it taken care of. But and I'm sure Senator Rogner is going to make sure that happens.
Yes. Now, I didn't mean to bring this slide up already because there's some questions I do have. Now, why does a state have to certify a national branch of the military?
Well, what they're doing in this bill is because we have created a new branch. Well, it's actually a sub branch. It's part of the Air Force, but similar to the Marines are a part of the branch of the Navy. But what we need to do is go through the entire Ohio Revised Code, and wherever it says this pertains to the armed services, members of the armed services, veterans of the armed services, all those places that it mentions, and the uniformed branches of service, everyone in there refers to a definition of armed services or uniformed services or whatever it's referring to. There's a definition in the revised code, and wherever there's that definition, the Space Force needs to be amended into that definition, so that when you're, which we're going to be talking about exemptions for military who have veterans who have served in the military, it will say in that code that the definition of the military armed services is in this section of the revised code. And if it doesn't say the Space Force in there, then the Space Force won't be eligible for an exemption on their homestead. So it needs to be put in there, and there's several places that it goes, and the bill just states that throughout the Ohio Revised Code, it needs to be inserted in there into any definition of the uniformed services or the armed military services and so forth. So it just includes them in all the benefits that the legislators have bestowed on us over the years.
Oh, okay. Well, that's good that they're finally getting around to that.
And again, that's moving along. It's gone through the House or the Senate. No, it's gone through the House. It needs to go to the Senate now. But again, no vote against it anywhere along the line. So, and it's a fairly new bill. It moved fairly quick to get as far as it did. I don't think that'll be a problem as long as the sponsors are on the ball and make sure it gets put on the agendas at the various different levels. So hopefully that'll go.
All right. Let me go ahead and bring this one slide back up here. We've mentioned it a little bit.
Yep. That's the biggie.
Yes.
That's the one it's one of the most important for veterans, and it's the one that has the furthest way to go to make it. And it's going to take a whole lot of phone calls,
Mm-hmm.
text messages, emails, you name it, to everybody you can think of down there in Columbus to get this put on the agendas and hearings done and passed. Uh, it's it's one of 7 bills that uh, are part of tax exemption for homestead that affects veterans. In this case, it's strictly for veterans or their spouses. In other cases, it affects anybody over 65 as well as veterans. In other cases, it just affects everybody. But there's numerous homestead bills out there, and they go anywhere from giving a 100% disabled veteran full exemption to giving them 50% uh, exemption on their homestead tax uh, to practically nothing, just 10% or whatever. And in some cases, it has a limit. If their house is over this value, they don't get it, or they don't get it as much.
Mm-hmm.
Or if they make this income, they don't get it. So the thing I like about Representative Richardson and Holmes bill is, and this is what they're pushing in their presentation on it, is that if you qualify as a disabled veteran for something, it should not matter how big of a house you live in, what the value of it is, how much money you make, whether you're married, have 20 kids, or whether you're single. None of that matters. You're a disabled veteran. You
Mm.
should be entitled to it. And that's one of the things that we fought all along on every bill is don't put any caps on this. You're either eligible or you're not eligible.
Right.
And as an example, if a veteran comes in, buys, gets out of the service, gets married, has a couple kids, gets a nice job, buys a nice house, everything's going rosy. He sells the house, buys a bigger house. Before long, he's living in a $500,000 house, and he's got a real good paying job. And now all of a sudden, this is a Vietnam vet. Agent Orange kicks in, and now
Right.
he can't work anymore. He
Mm-hmm.
goes to the VA. The VA says, "Yep, you're 100% disabled, unable to work. You're there, man. Congratulations." The fact that 20 years ago he was making lots of money and bought a big house shouldn't affect the fact that now he doesn't make money and he should get that exemption.
Mm-hmm.
So just saying that he's got a big fancy house shouldn't exempt him. He's
Right.
qualified.
He's
He should,
qualified.
and that's just one example of what we're looking at. Uh, Putting caps on it is not what we'll accept. So
Right.
Representative Richardson's is a veteran. So is Holmes, as a matter of fact.
Mm-hmm.
They both are. But she's a big advocate, huge advocate of veterans and getting them the things they deserve. So we're glad to have her in our corner.
Yeah, she actually spoke on my bill on the floor.
Right. Yeah.
So, yep.
Yeah. Now
Now,
that bill, like I said, it has a ways to go. It was introduced. Uh, it had the initial hearing. For those that don't understand, when it goes into a committee, it usually has 3 hearings. The
mhm,
first one is the sponsors who wrote the bill and introduced it. The second hearing is usually proponents, those that are for it, and they talk about why it's a good bill and why they want it and so forth. Then the third hearing is for the opponents, those that don't like it, and they come in and they have the opportunity to voice their opinion as to why it's no good and should be passed. Sometimes it goes on for 6, 7, 8 hearings because there's that much interest in it. Usually 3 hearings or 4 hearings is enough. This bill has already had the first 2. Richardson testified. Holmes was busy at another committee and he couldn't attend, but he had written testimony. They testified on behalf of the bill. Then they had a second hearing just a few weeks after that. There were, I think, 8 or 9 veterans there from various different organizations. DAV had 3 or 4. VFW had 3. AMVETS had 1. The Vietnam Veterans Association had 1. There were numerous there, all telling the reason for passing this bill. They did have a third hearing. Nobody showed up for it. Nobody voiced an opinion against it. But then it didn't go anywhere, and then he went on break, and now we've got a month to get it passed. So we've got a long way to go, and it's going to need everybody we can get on deck for this one, and calling their representatives and their senators to get it going. So
Now, I want to make sure I heard you correctly. This also includes spouses. So if a veteran spouse owns the house, they're still eligible.
there's some stipulations on how that will work. Uh, I'm trying to isolate the other ones. I've got, like I say, 7 bills in my mind, and sometimes they get put together,
Mhm.
and it confuses me. So, but uh, I can check it on and look at it. But I believe in this case, the spouse is covered if the qualifying veteran passes away. Then the spouse
Okay.
will be able to continue as long as she's living in that house. I don't think there's any stipulation on her afterwards. In some cases, it covers the spouse after the death of the veteran, but only as long as they remain single, uh,
Mm,
or for a limited number of years, 15, 20 years or something like that. Uh, but this one, I believe, is full, same coverage that the vet had will continue on with the spouse. So I may be a little bit inaccurate there. I'd have to go back and look at my notes and the analysis of the bill, but I think that's what this bill does. It's to most of us, this is the best veteran tax exempt, homestead tax exempt bill that there is in the General Assembly right now.
now you hit a good point that I'm gonna stray a little bit and cover when you- when the veteran dies and the spouse gets benefits. That's like some of the VA benefits. If they were to marry like 2 or 3 years after the veteran passes away, they lose all their benefits.
Right, right. Yeah, and that could be the case here. I do know it goes over to the spouse, but I don't know if there's stipulation. I can't remember if there's stipulations
Hmm.
uh, on her or him afterwards. If there
And
may not, but
and hopefully somebody will correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that's also stated in the Major Richard Starr Act in DC.
yeah,
Because not only if a veteran is retired and then gets a claim approved by the VA, then the VA claim is deducted out of their retirement. But
yeah,
I think it also covers where if the veteran dies and the spouse gets the VA benefits, that regardless if they marry 2 or 3 years, 3 or 2 years after the
yeah.
veteran passes away, they still keep their
I,
VA
I
benefits.
believe you're correct. Now that obviously has not landed on the president's desk yet, so who
Nope.
knows what amendments might happen between now
It
and then.
it
But
I think it passed the Senate, but has not even gone to committee in the House.
right, yeah, it's which is totally ridiculous. If you
Hmm.
look at all these co-sponsors they have, they have enough they have enough co-sponsors right now for that bill to go out on the floor, have a vote, and pass.
Yes.
But it sits in a committee somewhere, and nobody's even looking at it yet. So
Uh huh. Now,
very discouraging.
now I know we covered these 3 bills. Um, you uh, enlightened me on how co-sponsors work down at the State House.
It's a
And
little different than what they do in DC.
yes.
And that's a good question. I appreciate that because I was just explaining this to somebody else the other day. In DC, a bill is introduced and obviously does the same thing, goes to committees and you've got to go through
Hmm.
the hearings and so forth. Uh, but right off the get go, instantly, the other senators or congressmen, depending on which chamber it's in, can sign on as a co-sponsor. And the nice thing that I like about the Congress's website is it lists the date of when somebody signs on as a co-sponsor.
Yep.
So you can look and see, okay, my senator finally signed on as a co-sponsor, but it was 2 years later. Why did it
Yeah.
take that long? You know, or
Exactly.
he did it right away, so that's great.
Mhm.
But in the state house, a lot of the representatives, senators in Columbus do not co-sign, even if they're for the bill. And this was explained to me by my own senator, Senator Nathan Manning. He explained it to me and why he doesn't, and why most of them are the same way. If he signs on as a co-sponsor to a bill, and then while it's in committee or goes to the other chamber, it gets amended, and the amendment is something that just totally goes against his beliefs, and he can no longer sponsor that bill, then he's got to go and unsponsor it and get
Yeah.
his name taken off. Not only is that extra work and a pain in the butt for him to do, but it's embarrassing to them.
Yes.
Say, okay, I'm for this bill and I love the vets. And then a week later say, oh, I'm not for that bill anymore. I know it's for the vets, but I'm not for that bill anymore. That's
Mhm.
embarrassing to them, and they don't do that. Once they vote, yes, I vote for this bill, then they will sponsor it and they'll add their name. And they do that right as all at the same time. They'll have the roll call vote. The president or the speaker of the house will say, okay, the bill passed. If anybody wishes to amend the bill, sign on now. And they've got a little button on their desk. And they push the button and they are added as a co-sponsor to the bill right then and there, all at the same time. And that's when they co-sponsor it. So if you look at the records on the website, you will look and see, okay, my senator or my representative did co-sponsor that bill. But were they for it the whole time, or did they just come on because they want to make it look good on their resume
Right.
for the next time they run? You don't know.
Mhm.
And that's what I like about Congress. They tell you when that person signed on as a co-sponsor, and they will do it immediately before it ever gets to the floor or vote. So I
Yeah.
like that much. I like that system much better. I wish we could do it here in the state house.
Now, I know every senator down in Columbus on my bill co-signed,
Yeah, yeah,
and there's only a few who did not in the House. One of them was so excited that it passed
they
that
forgot.
he forgot to press the button. He went around high-fiving everybody,
Yeah,
and all of a sudden he's like, "Oh my god." And he was too late to press the button.
yeah, yeah,
So,
yeah. They only have like 20 seconds to do
seconds, yes.
it.
But yeah, he was running up and down,
Yeah,
high-fiving people and everything. And Christina Rogner was in the audience, so he went over and high-fived her and
yeah,
stuff. And so,
yeah. You got to pay attention there. Things
mhm.
things happen real quick.
But I've been trying to teach people how to use Congress.gov on federal bills,
Right, right.
telling them how,
There's a lot there.
yeah, how to read, the information, how, if there's amendments attached, because one party might say, well, the other party voted against this bill, even though it's to help veterans, but they actually voted against it because of the amendments.
Right, right.
And that's what I'm trying to teach people.
Yeah,
You got to look up these bills. You got to see what's attached to the bill, because
right.
a certain senator tried to attach discontinuing all foreign aid in an amendment, and then he tried to attach it to the PACT Act.
Oh.
Yeah. So that alone would have had everybody voting no.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. We had, and there's more than just the attachments, the amendments that go into it that can change their thinking. And I'm not going to name names, but there was
Mhm.
a representative. Well, no, he was a senator at that time. A senator, one of our Ohio senators, was totally for building the wall. And I'm not getting into yes or no, is that a good idea? But
Mhm.
he was for building the wall uh, between us and Mexico. The financing of it was in three sections, and I don't have all the details, but there was one section that a third of the bill was being paid here, and a third of the bill was paid here, and the final third of the bill was sort of left open in the air. and we'll worry about that when the time comes.
Right.
For that third, he voted against the bill. And my point in this is that a lot of them are for 100% for veterans, and they're for the veterans bills that give them the benefits that the VA is going to have to pay and so forth, but they're against the financing and cost involved. They get very conservative on that, or there's no place in the budget to add more to it. So the financing is an important thing. When you hear the headlines that Senator so and so or Congressman so and so voted down a vets bill, they didn't vote it down because of the vets. They voted it down because there was no way to pay for it in their mind. And in some cases, there isn't a way. I mean, look at that we're in right now, because too many people are saying, "Oh, I love that. Let's go ahead and do it." Okay, so it's going to cost us a few $1 million. What the heck? And now we're where we are.
Yeah.
So that's another thing that you need to look at. What's the cost of a bill? That's quite often the kicker as to getting it passed.
I'm trying to see if I still have this one slide on this one bill that I was talking about at one time here. This way I can see if wait a minute, there it is. That might be it. Let's see. Be it. Yep, that's it. We'll let me pull that one up. It's a friend of mine. His son was stationed at Camp Lejeune.
Oh, okay.
And okay, where did it go? Oh, okay, right there. Okay, it's coming up. There it is. All right.
Okay.
My friend is Robert Schwenk, who was a Marine, and he now runs Irreverent Warriors for the Cleveland chapter of Irreverent Warriors.
Okay.
His son was Austin Schwenk, and Austin was murdered in the barracks.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I remember reading about that. Yeah.
Now, the only thing I can find on this bill is it had one hearing in committee, and then that's it.
It did not pass in that hearing? Because the reason I asked that, Tim, is in the spring, before they went on summer break, May, June area, late April at the earliest, there was a lot of these bills. There still are a bunch coming in, renaming highways or making highways memorial highways, sections of them, or bridges or overpasses and so forth. And there's quite a few, but there was an influx of them for a couple of months there before the break, and they would go to the first hearing, and the sponsor would give their testimony, and the committee immediately voted to pass them and sent them out to the floor, and were passed on the floor.
According to this one, it was reported by the committee, and that's it.
Let me double check here. House Bill 350.
And the sponsors were Troy and Callender.
Callender and Troy. Okay, it was introduced December 23. Went to the Transportation Committee. Yeah, it hasn't. I don't even see where. Well, it may have. I don't have it on here as to whether they've had 2 or 3 hearings or not.
Yeah, I can't see
it's
that.
Still in committee. actually there was one instance they had 4 or 5 of them all at one time, and they lumped them into one omnibus bill and passed 4 or 5 of them all in one bill at one point before the break. So these are the type of bill. I mean, unless there's some weird thing about that particular person that you know might make somebody shake their head. They usually get passed fairly easy and usually don't take too long to do it. So I would think even in the lame duck, and there's a bunch of them still out there that, and some that came in over the summer haven't even been assigned to a committee yet because they can't do that on the break. But I don't see where there'd be a problem. Yeah, it only had the one hearing. Representative Callender presented his testimony. It might have been for both of them, but
I'm probably going to have to give them a call tomorrow and see what their staff has to say.
Okay, yeah. I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, it's worth continuing to follow up and to nudge them a little bit, but this type of bill shouldn't have any problem. As a matter of fact, like I say, as you get into the lame duck session when they get back to break, it's quite possible they take the 6 or 7 or 8 or 9, however many there are right now, and lump them all into one and pass one bill that'll take care of all of them. They did it earlier, and they might do it again. That saves hearings.
Yeah,
one hearing does it all. So that's a good possibility. Check with them, seeing if that's a possibility that they might be doing that. I mean, they've got the inside scoop on what's going on that we don't have. So, but they're willing to share that information if they can. So.
Yes. Now, I'm going to bring up one other issue here. It's not an issue, but something I think the folks in Ohio should know. Now, when you try to contact congressmen and senators, federally elected congressmen and senators, you have to be their constituent in order to email them.
Yeah.
Now, here in Ohio,
not so.
If they are a state congressman or a state senator, you can email them all.
Yes. I subscribe to. Not everybody has them. There's about half of them have a newsletter that they put out anywhere from weekly to once a month. Sometimes only quarterly or whenever they get around to it in a few cases. But I subscribe to every single one of them. At the beginning of every General Assembly, I go through the entire list of 132 people and request their newsletter for every one of them. And they send them to you. They don't look and see what you put in your address, but they don't check that. On the General Assembly's website, you can look up every single representative and senator. They each have a page, just like federals do. But on there is the contact information. It gives you the phone number to the office, the fax number to the office, and the email to the office.
Yep.
And while they each have their own individual cell phones and email addresses, which they give to some people, not to all people. I've got a few, but not many. It's like call forwarding. Every call or every email that goes to their office email shows up on their cell phone. They see every single one of them. They don't wait till 2 days later when they get back in the office after the weekend. I guarantee if you send them an email Saturday night sometime, they're looking at it Sunday morning when they get up and pick up their phone. So they will get that information, and you can, like you say, it doesn't ask where you live. It just gives you that email, and you can email them.
You don't even have to be a resident of Ohio.
No. And I've told a lot of my VFW friends in other states, I said, you guys have a bill similar to this that we're trying to pass right now. I certainly would appreciate it if you would send an email. And some of them do, some of them don't. They say, well, I'm not in your state. I don't care.
That's right.
You've already gone through this. Let them know that this is a good bill because it's working in your state, So
Hmm.
yeah, they'll listen to anybody. And we've had testimony, not necessarily veterans bills, but other bills, uh, from experts, if you will, from other states, and they talk about the bills that worked in their states, and so forth. So they listen to anybody that can give them information on whether to pass or not pass a bill.
Yeah. Matter of fact, that reminds me, when I went to the last hearing on my bill, that before they got to me, they had people from Texas and Florida testifying on a different bill.
Right. Yep.
And that I was like, wait a minute, nobody from Ohio knows about this? And I forget the chairman's name. It was the Senate for the Public Safety and Veterans Committee. I forget his name,
Yep.
but he's and Senator Craig
Johnson.
Johnson. That's right. And then Senator Craig. Afterwards they pulled me off to the side because
Right.
we heard you mumbling out there. We just want to let you know there are people in Ohio who do want this bill, but these two are experts that we called to come in to testify. Right. I'm
And
like, okay.
And quite often, as you know, the sponsor of a bill will line up the people they want in there to talk.
Yes.
They'll allow anybody else to come in. That's fine. You can do that. But they're the ones that call the experts, and or in your case, you're the one that got the bill to begin with, and worked on the PACT Act and so forth. So you've got credibility. You're somewhat of an expert when it comes to that. So that's why Senator Rogner had you specifically in mind to come in.
Yes.
I just sort of butted in and offered some testimony in there, but she wasn't going to put it down. But
she wasn't going to say no to you.
So
yeah.
So just because nobody's from Ohio is there doesn't mean somebody isn't watching that bill and knows what's going on. It's just nobody asked them to be there, and it looked like it was going to pass anyway. So there's no point in spending a day down at the State House.
And then she asked. I'm not going to say her last name, but Ashley from American Foundation of Suicide Prevention to come. Now, Ashley submitted written testimony. Little did Senator Rogner know that she's one of my main people to help me plan my rallies.
Okay.
So she was like, "Oh yeah, I'll definitely testify for this."
Well, it's a small world. You only have a few people working, doing the dirty work on most things, so they all know each other. So
yes. And that reminds me, I need to get a hold of Adam so we can get him included in next year's rallies too.
Yeah.
Nice young man.
Yes,
it was awesome meeting him.
Yeah.
Now, are there any other bills that veterans might be interested in that might need a phone call or two?
There's one that I've been actually on the other side working against one. It did get passed in spite of us through the Senate, and it is now in committee in the House. And it will begin to have hearings over in the House as soon as we get back from break. It's interesting. I don't want to get into it too much because I've been pushing for it to be amended. The way it's written, I just can't believe it's good. And the senator who is the sponsor has met with me a couple of times, but just doesn't get it. He's open to conversations, but it doesn't do any good to get that amended. Maybe it's because he can't find a way to amend it to suit him and me. I don't know. But I do have a meeting coming up with him next Wednesday, I think it is, in his office. And I'm not sure. He called me and invited me into a meeting yesterday. And I said, yeah, I'll be there. I don't know what it's about or anything, so I don't want to get into it too much because he may have already taken care of it for me, and I'd be bad-mouthing something that it's unnecessary to do. So, but it's a bill. I can give you an idea of what it's about and so forth. Okay. The bill is Senate Bill 63. It's sponsored by Senator George Lang. Senator Lang is a I won't say a small business. He's a businessman. He's had businesses himself. He's had experience with this situation, so this is right down his alley. I think the catalyst behind this bill is the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. They're the ones pushing it in several states, and it is actually passed in some states, but we're fighting it in every single one. The veterans organizations are. And the purpose of the bill is to prevent what they call piling on or adding on. I think piling on, I think it is, but in a lawsuit, and it's strictly for asbestos claims. If a civilian or a veteran has been exposed to asbestos, comes down with a disease or whatever, they will sue asbestos manufacturers. And what has happened is they piled on the lawyers who are filing the suits, just put in every single manufacturer of every single type of asbestos in the lawsuit. Then it's up to the manufacturers and the people that are in the lawsuit to come back and prove that they aren't involved. That isn't their type of asbestos that caused it, or they didn't put it in that building that's being the subject of the suit and so forth, to get out of the suit. And that's expensive. They've got to hire lawyers and possibly detectives and whatever to clear their name. That's piling on. And what this bill is trying to do is prevent that. It's creating things that if you're going to sue, you've got to prove and state specific where it happened, when it happened, what was the type of asbestos, what was the manufacturer of the asbestos, how long were they exposed to it, what type of exposure was it. I mean, it's just very detailed and specific information that you've got to put in there. My complaint is with mesothelioma, which is the only way to get it is from asbestos, is what most military people get, lung cancer, lung disease. It doesn't show even any signs of being there for 20, 30 years. So consequently, you served in the military, and it wasn't 30 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember the address of every barracks you stayed at?
No.
Do you know what asbestos was in each building that you were in?
No.
I was aboard ship, two different ships, 3 different times. There's absolutely no way. And there's over 700 types of asbestos on an aircraft carrier. If I've got to, and that's my complaint, is how specific do you need? What is your definition of a specific address?
Mm-hmm.
This compartment had its own address. My mail was sent to a post office, Fleet Post Office in San Francisco. It didn't my address, but my compartment had an address. My galley had an address. My workspace had an address. I couldn't tell you the numbers of those
Right.
rooms, and I certainly couldn't tell you what type of asbestos went through each one, because unfortunately, not 700 different types of asbestos went through every room. 5 or 6 went through this one, 2 or 3 different ones went through here. How specific? And that's what I'm arguing with them on. It is you're making it impossible for a veteran to file a lawsuit against asbestos claim here in Ohio.
Yeah.
And he's met with me a couple of times, but no amendments come up yet. Maybe he's got one now. I don't know. We'll hope so.
Now, I remember they voted on that bill.
Yeah,
when they voted on my bill.
Yep.
In the House, and it got voted down. And the sponsor of the bill got up and says anybody in the military can write their branch that they were in, and they will give them that information. I blurted out, almost got in trouble, and I says, I'm still waiting on the Air Force to give me what I was exposed to in the war.
Right. Well, in my testimonies, I always mention, because it's what I know. I mentioned aircraft carrier. That's what I was on 30 years, 50 years ago. And that's the other thing I've got with asbestos, or with mesothelioma. From the time it's diagnosed by a doctor to the time you pass away is anywhere from 12 months to 36 months. consequently, if a veteran is going to file a lawsuit, it's going to fall on the spouse or the children.
Yeah.
I certainly didn't tell my wife where I was aboard the ship.
Right.
She wasn't there. My kids don't know. So that's the other thing I was looking at.
Mhm.
But I mentioned it, and that's what was always brought up was the aircraft carrier. Yeah, the Department of Defense has all the blueprints, all the contracts in file somewhere, and any asbestos lawyer probably already has copies of it as to what asbestoses were put into each different ship. But that still doesn't tell me which of the 700 types went through the compartment I was in. And do I need that address? Because all I can tell you, it was right under the flight deck over on the port side. I couldn't tell you the number.
Right.
So, but
even the commander of the ship probably couldn't tell you the number
on it. That's all, and hopefully get that changed. But
I remember them arguing about that, and
it's one of those few times which doesn't happen very often. It was a mixed vote. Both Republican Democrats voted for it. Both Republicans and Democrats voted against it.
Yeah,
and the best thing I can say is one of the people voting against it was a lawyer. And I'm working with an association of lawyers on this. They're the ones that brought it to my attention, and I've been working with them on it. But that's one of the things they're complaining about. I'm not looking at the legal aspects. I'm looking at the possibility that there's no way I can make all the decisions and come up with the information you need. They're looking at the legal aspects, and they say that and I don't know, I'm not a lawyer, but they don't have the time they've cut the time in which they have to come up with the information that the defense wants and so forth. I leave that part to them. And that's one of the reasons that the lawyer on the committee voted against it. It's because it just all the way through, there's just too many things that take away the constitutional ability for me to file a lawsuit against somebody that's done harm to me. And that's in the Ohio Constitution. I have the right to do that. And that takes it away as far as I'm concerned. So we've been fighting that. I have a feeling he's going to trying to get really, really push hard on it to get it through during the lame duck. But I don't want to say too much because I've got a meeting with him next Wednesday, and we'll see what he's come up with.
Yeah. All right. Keep me informed.
It'll make us all happy.
Well, David, it's been an honor having you on again.
I've enjoyed it. Thank you.
Oh, man, I enjoy you coming on. We have good, honest, great discussions about what's happening down there in Columbus. And I hope our fellow veterans listen to what we say.
Yeah.
Because it affects them.
I'll tell you the same thing I tell everybody else real quick.
Mm-hmm.
The closer to home you get, the more important the legislator is.
That's right.
That mayor is much more important to you and your family in your hometown than your senator is in Washington, D.C.
Yep.
So get involved.
Yes. Yes. All right, folks, we're going to wrap it up here. But I do want to mention that Veterans Insurance Network's annual Christmas card drive is happening right now. And we do that in cooperation with the Cleveland Cavaliers. Last year, the Cavaliers provided these little gift boxes with cookies and Christmas card and all kinds of little goodies in there. And most of the cards came from the town of Twinsburg. We do get people from across the country that do send them in. And this year, we're expanding it from not just at Wade Park and the Veterans Home in Sandusky, but we're going to be allowed to go to Dayton and Chillicothe this year and hand out Christmas cards at those two hospitals as well. So last year's total was 2,500 cards. We hope to get at least 3,000 this year since we're going to 2 more hospitals. So I'll put it in the description on how you can get in contact with us and how to send the cards in if you want to send some cards to help out. And I don't know who our guest will be next week because I gotta go see the doctor tomorrow and see what happens. So I might be in the hospital next week, but who knows? We'll find out tomorrow. But question for you too, David, before I
Yep.
leave.
Okay.
Were you invited to the Cleveland Cavaliers salute to service game this Saturday?
I saw something on Facebook. I was not personally invited. No, I wouldn't be able to go anyway. I've got a couple other
Okay.
things this Saturday, but
Well, I'll keep you informed for next year.
I'm glad they do it. I'm glad they do it.
Yes.
I know it's nice.
I 2 years ago I was their, what do you want to say? Honorary guest. I don't know. I was given an
I think I
award.
saw something about that.
Yeah, I was given an award that's was sponsored by Jif Peanut Butter and the Cavaliers. So
Well, there you go.
yes. Don't know who's winning it this year, but it's a good fun award. Good fun time. So I'll keep you informed for next year.
Okay, sounds good. Sounds
All right,
good.
folks. Like I said, I don't know what's going to happen next week. But I'll keep you all informed and enjoy your rest of your week.
Happy
And
holidays, everybody.
Yes.